My goodness, Boris Johnson is suggesting that if it comes to it, he'll call a snap general election. If he does, is that the right call for him?
Well, it would be maybe a surprising choice, given where the Conservatives are in the polls. It's kind of very difficult to estimate exactly what would happen, but you'd think at the way they are at the moment, they'd certainly be looking at losing their majority. But of course, we're not in an election period now. We know that the public can kind of react differently if an election is actually called. But at the moment, the Conservatives have got a lot of troubles. Boris Johnson's personal ratings, we know, are poor. 7 in 10 are dissatisfied with the way that he's doing his job, and around 6 in 10, including half of Conservative voters, think he should resign. But the Conservatives' problems aren't just about his personal ratings. There are also their own brand ratings. The Conservative brand ratings have been getting worse. They're falling on things like whether they're fit to govern. And of course, they've got great big issues like the economy and cost of living to deal with.
Comes down to bluff and counter bluff, and you're the guy that should read through all of this, Gideon. So Boris Johnson, he's obviously the parliamentary party have obviously fallen out of love with him. He's saying to the parliamentary party, right, you be careful what you wish for, because I may call a general election and you lot will lose your seats. So could he actually pull off a Houdini and the public mood swings back his way, or the public mood looks at the alternative and doesn't see one?
So it's true that Labour themselves have got their own issues. Keir Starmer has reduced a lot of the negativity that was there for Labour under some of his predecessors, but he hasn't really replaced it with a great deal of positive enthusiasm. He's not really kind of breaking out of the range of the kind of the average position for a leader of the opposition at the moment. He's not where, say, David Cameron or Tony Blair were when they were successful opposition leaders. So he certainly has some way to go in terms of building enthusiasm for the Labour Party. Around about half say they don't know what he stands for. But it's still the case that Labour are ahead and Keir Starmer are ahead on many metrics as well as voting intentions. Certainly some of that is as much down to Conservative weakness as Labour strengths, but Labour are ahead still on many of those issues.
Let's look at the sort of inner workings of the Conservative Party right now and the potential for a leadership contest. Based on what you know from polling, who actually stands a chance to become the next PM?
Well, actually, it's probably a pretty open race at the moment. If you look at the public as a whole, then Rishi Sunak and sort of just behind him, Sajid Javid probably have the most favourable ratings. And amongst Conservative supporters, they tend to have the most favourable ratings as well. But that's still only a minority of people who feel positively about them. They have a reasonable number of negative ratings. They have lots of don't knows. And for Rishi Sunak, his ratings are certainly nowhere near where they were during his honeymoon period at the beginning of the pandemic. And then for many of the other contenders, it's a sort of a question of the public don't really have a very strong view about them yet. So where they are at the moment isn't necessarily a good guide of what views might be were they to become Prime Minister. We would expect the public's views to change quite rapidly should one of them become Prime Minister. So there's not necessarily a very clear favourite.
If there isn't a clear favourite, the cabinet ministers right now have got to make a bit of a gamble. If they want to put their own career first, which many of them do, how much might they be hurt right now by standing with Boris Johnson?
So, you're right. That's clearly going to be a question that many of them are grappling with. I suppose the key point at this stage, if they're thinking about that, is that it's not the public, of course, who are going to make this decision. It's going to be their fellow Conservative MPs and Conservative Party members. And they're going to have a slightly different view. And so that's what they're going to be basing their views on. But you would hope that they are also thinking about how they would play amongst the public as a whole when they're making that judgment.